The council chamber floated in the void above Zenthar Prime, a massive ring of transparent metal that caught the light of 3 distant suns. Inside, representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, each area modified to suit their particular biology. The Zenthari occupied crystalline seats that hummed with energy. The Delphines rested in tanks of treated water. The Cricks hung from the ceiling in their preferred inverted position, their compound eyes watching everything below. Ambassador Chen sat in the human section, a simple chair in a simple booth. She wore a plain gray uniform, her hair tied back in a practical bun. At 63 years old, she had served on the council for nearly 2 decades. She had seen many debates, many arguments, and many decisions that shaped the galaxy. Today felt different somehow, though she could not say why. The current speaker was Councillor Veshtar, a Zenthari whose crystalline body refracted light into rainbow patterns. His voice resonated through the chamber's translation system, reaching every delegate in their own language. He was discussing resource allocations for the next cycle, a routine matter that usually passed without much debate. Chen waited for her turn to speak. The human delegation had submitted a proposal 3 weeks ago, a modest request for shared resources to fund a joint exploration mission into an unmapped sector. Humans would provide the ships, the crew, and most of the equipment. They asked only for fuel supplements and scientific equipment from the Council's surplus stores. The projected benefits included new trade routes, potential habitable worlds, and expanded knowledge for all member species. When the allocation list appeared on the central display, Chen noticed immediately that the human proposal was not included. She activated her microphone and spoke calmly. Councillor Veshitar, I noticed that proposal HC7734 is not on the allocation list. Might I ask if there was an issue with our submission? Veshitar's form seemed to pulse with what the translation system interpreted as amusement. Ambassador Chen, the council reviewed your proposal. We found it to be, shall we say, unnecessary at this time. Chen kept her expression neutral. I see. Might I ask what criteria led to that conclusion? The proposal met all standard requirements and offered significant potential returns. A Delphine counselor named Rella activated her speaker. Her voice bubbled through her water tank before the translator processed it. Ambassador, humanity has submitted 17 exploration proposals in the last 5 cycles. Frankly, we find this obsession with mapping empty space to be a waste of resources. There are more practical matters that require attention. Such as? Chen asked, her tone still polite. Infrastructure maintenance for one, Rella continued. Perhaps if humans spent less time dreaming about distant stars and more time on useful work, your species would be taken more seriously. Chen felt something shift inside her, but her face remained calm. I was not aware that infrastructure maintenance was incompatible with exploration. Humans have been handling both for quite some time. Veshitar's light patterns shifted to a sharper frequency. Yes, and we appreciate your species' willingness to handle such tasks. Every society needs workers who are content with maintenance duties. Not every species can be visionaries, after all. A ripple of what might have been laughter passed through several delegations. Chen noticed that the Crix delegate, a being named Chkrik, was waving his foremost appendages in a gesture of agreement. If I may add, Chkrik clicked, his words emerging from the translator as precise and sharp. Humanity has found its niche in the galactic community. You are reliable administrators, adequate technicians, and willing laborers. These are not glamorous roles, but they are necessary. Perhaps it is time to accept what you are rather than reaching for what you are not. Chen sat very still. Around the chamber, other delegates were nodding or making their species-equivalent gestures of agreement. This was not just Veshitar's opinion. This was consensus. She thought about the 300 human technicians currently maintaining the communications relay network that kept the entire council connected. She thought about the human medical teams working on 17 different worlds, treating diseases that local doctors had given up on. She thought about the human engineers who had spent 5 years fixing the environmental systems on Delphine Station 7 after a catastrophic failure, working in toxic conditions because they were the only ones who volunteered. She thought about the human teachers, diplomats, mediators, and scientists scattered across hundreds of worlds. She thought about the reports she filed every month, detailed documents that apparently no one read. describing all the small problems that humans quietly fixed before they became large ones. Veshtar was speaking again. The Council's position is clear, Ambassador Chen. Humanity serves a valuable support function within our society. We suggest you focus your energies on what humans do best. Leave the grand initiatives to species with more vision. This matter is closed. Chen stood up slowly. She straightened her uniform and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of worlds. Some looked smug. Others looked indifferent. A few looked almost apologetic, but none spoke up. I understand, Chen said quietly. The Council's position is very clear indeed. Thank you for your time, Councillor Veshtar. You have given me much to consider. She turned to leave, then paused and turned back. If I might request a moment of the Council's time? Veshtar's pattern showed impatience, but he gestured for her to continue. I want to inform the Council that humanity will be withdrawing from Council space, effective immediately. This is not a hostile act. This is not a protest. We simply believe it is time for humans to pursue their interests independently. All transition protocols will be followed. All documentation will be provided. We thank the Council for the opportunity to serve these past centuries. We wish you all success in your future endeavors. The chamber fell silent. Chen could feel the confusion radiating from the assembled delegates. Veshtar recovered first. Ambassador Chen, surely this is an overreaction to a simple administrative decision. Not at all, Counselor. The decision is administrative as well. We are withdrawing our membership. All proper notices will be filed within the hour. Rella's voice bubbled urgently. You cannot simply leave the Council. There are procedures, debates, transition periods, all of which are outlined in Section 47 of the Council Charter, which humans helped write 200 years ago. A member species may withdraw at any time with 30 days' notice. However, because humans are reliable administrators, we have already prepared all necessary documentation. The transition can be completed in 2 weeks if the Council accepts our expedited timeline. Chickerick clicked rapidly. This is absurd. Where will you go? What will you do? Chen smiled, a small, tired smile. We will do what we have always done, Counselor. We will explore. We will build. We will learn. We will simply do it without the Council's supervision. Good day, honored delegates. She walked out of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Behind her, the delegates began to speak all at once, their voices rising in confusion and disbelief. But Chen did not look back. As she entered her ship, she activated her communication array and sent a single encoded message to every human installation, vessel, and colony in Council space. The message was brief. Authorization code Chen Omega 7. Initiate protocol exodus. Execute with dignity. Leave nothing undone. We're going home. Across hundreds of worlds, humans received the message and began to pack. The message reached Station Maintenance Chief Marcus Webb while he was elbow-deep in the guts of Waste Reclamation Unit 7 on Delphine Station 7. The unit was acting up again, which meant Marcus was acting as mediator between machinery that wanted to work and Delphine engineers who insisted on ignoring the maintenance schedule. He read the message twice, then carefully closed the access panel he had been working on. His hands were steady as he gathered his tools and placed them in his kit with practiced precision. 23 years he had worked on this station. 23 years of keeping systems running that the Delphines either could not or would not maintain properly. Station manager Kella found him in his quarters an hour later. The Delphine's tank suit hummed softly as she entered. Marcus, I heard a rumor that humans are leaving. Please tell me this is not true. Marcus was packing his personal items into storage containers. Photos of family back on Earth, a collection of old books, a half-finished model of a ship he had been building for his grandson. It's true, Kella. We received official orders. All human personnel are returning to human space, but why? What happened? Administrative decision, Marcus said. He did not elaborate. I've prepared full documentation for all systems under my supervision. The files are in the station's central database under my access code. You'll want to assign someone to review them before the reclamation units go critical again. Kella's translator conveyed distress. Marcus, those systems are incredibly complex. You are the only one who truly understands them. The modifications you made, the compensation protocols, the predictive maintenance algorithms, it's all documented, Marcus assured her. He sealed a container and marked it with a shipping label. Everything is written down. Step by step, any competent engineer can follow the instructions. But we don't have anyone who... Kella stopped herself. How long do we have? I leave in 6 days. The documentation is complete now. I recommend you start training replacements immediately. Kella was silent for a long moment. Finally, she asked, will you come back? Marcus smiled sadly. I don't think so, Kella, but thank you for asking. 3 worlds away, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo was shutting down the medical research laboratory she had run for 15 years. The lab studied cross-species diseases, finding treatments that worked for multiple alien biologies. It was delicate work that required understanding how different species' immune systems interacted. Her Crick's assistant, Chkana, watched with obvious distress. Doctor, the Vrel Plague Project is only half finished. If we stop now, thousands will die when the next outbreak occurs. Sarah continued packing her research notes into secured data containers. The project files are complete through Phase 4. Any qualified xenobiologist can continue the work. But Doctor, you know the Vrel biology better than anyone. You spent years learning their cellular structure. You published the definitive paper on their immune response. Without me, someone else will learn, Sarah said firmly. Science does not depend on one person, Chikana. The knowledge is preserved. Someone will continue it. She did not tell Chikana that she had already checked. There were no other xenobiologists with her specialization within 5 sectors. She did not tell him that the Council's funding for cross-species medical research had been cut 3 times in the last 5 years. She did not tell him that she had spent half her time writing grant proposals that were never approved, begging for resources to save lives that the Council did not consider important. She just packed her things and prepared to go home. On the Zenthari mining world of Kethvar, engineer James Rodriguez stood in the equipment depot and watched Zenthari officials examine the machinery. One of them, a minor administrator named Keshatal, kept pointing at different systems with confusion. These modifications are not standard, Keshtal said. Why are there secondary power coupling systems here? Why is the cooling network 3 times larger than the manufacturer's specifications? James handed him a datapad. Because the standard configurations don't work in Kethvar's high radiation environment. The secondary systems compensate for electromagnetic interference. The cooling network handles the thermal load that the radiation generates. It's all explained in the documentation. But this must have cost my time, James interrupted. The parts came from surplus stores. The labor was performed during regular maintenance cycles. There's no additional expense to account for. Keshatal looked at the machinery, then at James, then back at the machinery. How long have these systems been running modified like this? 18 years. 18 years? And we never knew? James shrugged. The mine kept producing. That's what mattered. The documentation is in your system now. Any questions, check the manual. Section 7 covers emergency procedures. Pay attention to that part. If the secondary systems fail, you've got about 4 hours before the primary systems overheat and shut down the entire operation. 4 hours? But 4 hours, James repeated. Maybe 5 if you're lucky. Don't skip the maintenance schedule. Good luck, Keshtal. The pattern repeated across the galaxy. Human mediators withdrew from ongoing trade disputes between species who had been arguing for centuries. The disputes immediately became more heated without human patience to cool tempers. Human logistics coordinators left supply chain management positions. They handed over documentation showing how they had been routing shipments, balancing inventories, and predicting shortages months in advance. The algorithms they used were clear. The data was accessible. The methods were sound. But the humans who had been running those systems with intuitive understanding were gone. Human. Teachers departed from schools on alien worlds where they had been teaching not just human students but alien, children whose parents worked alongside humans. The lesson plans were complete. The curriculum was documented. The teaching methods were explained. But the teachers who understood how to make a Crick's child laugh while learning mathematics were leaving. Communications Relay Station Gamma 7 was a hub that connected 17 sectors. Chief Technician Linda Hernandez had maintained the station for 12 years. She knew every relay node, every backup system, every quirk of the network. When minor fluctuations appeared, she fixed them before they became problems. When new species joined the network, she integrated their communication protocols without anyone noticing the transition. The day she left, she handed the station over to a team of 6 technicians from 3 different species. They were trained. They were competent. They had all the documentation. Linda had spent the last week teaching them everything she could. But she knew, even if they did not yet, that documentation could not convey experience. You could write down that relay node 447 ran hot and needed extra cooling. You could note that the Crick's communication wavelength sometimes interfered with Delphine frequencies. You could log that the backup power system took 17 seconds longer to engage than the specifications claimed, but you could not write down the feeling you got when something was about to go wrong. You could not document the intuition that said a system needed attention, even though all the readings were normal. You could not teach someone in a week what you learned in 12 years of watching, listening, and understanding. Linda left the station and boarded the transport ship. She looked back once through the viewport at the massive structure floating in space, lights blinking in their regular patterns. Then she turned away and found her seat. Across the galaxy, in thousands of locations, humans were doing the same thing. They were leaving behind detailed instructions, complete documentation, and thorough explanations. They were transferring access codes, training replacements when possible, and answering questions with patience. They left nothing undone. They fulfilled every obligation. They maintained their dignity and professionalism until the end, and then quietly, without ceremony or complaint, they went home. 3 months after the last human transport ship crossed the border into human space, Station Manager Kella stood in front of Waste Reclamation Unit 7 and tried very hard not to panic. The unit was making a sound it should not make, a grinding, stuttering noise that the diagnostic systems insisted was normal. But Kella had worked around Marcus Webb long enough to know that when machinery made new noises, something was wrong. She pulled up the documentation Marcus had left behind. It was comprehensive, she had to admit. Thousands of pages covering every system, every modification, every maintenance procedure. The problem was finding the right information in those thousands of pages. After 2 hours of searching, she found a reference to acoustic irregularities in Section 45, Subsection 12. The document explained that grinding noises from the primary processing chamber usually indicated a buildup of crystallized waste in the filtration membranes. The solution was a 3-step cleaning procedure that required shutting down the unit, flushing the system with a specific chemical solution, and recalibrating the flow sensors. Kella assigned 3 engineers to the task. They studied the procedure, gathered the required materials, and began the shutdown sequence. That was when they discovered that the backup unit, which was supposed to handle waste processing during maintenance, would not activate. More frantic searching through documentation revealed that the backup unit required monthly testing to remain operational. Marcus had been doing these tests himself. The current engineering staff had not continued the practice. The backup unit's startup capacitors were discharged and would take 6 hours to recharge before the unit could activate. Delphine Station 7 had approximately 4 hours of waste storage capacity with both reclamation units offline. Kella sent an emergency message to the council requesting assistance. While she waited for a response, her engineers worked frantically to implement the cleaning procedure faster than recommended. They succeeded in restarting the primary unit after 3 hours and 40 minutes. The station's waste systems came back online with less than 20 minutes of storage capacity remaining. The incident was reported to the council as a minor maintenance issue. Kella did not mention that Marcus had apparently been preventing such incidents for 23 years, without anyone noticing. 2 sectors away, the Crick's colony world of Chikvar was facing a different crisis. The terraforming equipment that maintained the planet's atmosphere was failing. Specifically, the oxygen generators were producing 40% less output than required. The colony's chief engineer, Crickstal, examined the systems with growing confusion. According to the manufacturer specifications, the generators should have been producing exactly what they were producing. The problem was that the specifications were wrong for Chikvar's atmospheric conditions. Crickstal found the answer in files left by the previous human engineering team. Apparently, the oxygen generators were underperforming on Chikvar since installation 15 years ago. The human engineers had installed supplemental processing units that quietly made up the difference. They had never reported the problem because they had fixed it themselves and did not want to make the Cricks feel inadequate about their own equipment. Now those supplemental units were breaking down, and there were no spare parts available. The parts had been custom fabricated by humans using techniques that Crick's engineers did not fully understand. Crickstal sent an urgent request to the Council for replacement equipment. The Council approved emergency funding, but the equipment would take 8 weeks to manufacture and deliver. The colony had enough oxygen reserve for 3 weeks. In the end, the colony was evacuated. 17,000 Cricks were relocated to other worlds at enormous expense. The evacuation was called a success because no one died. No one mentioned that the crisis would never have happened if the humans had still been there. The communications relay network was experiencing cascading failures. The symptoms started small. Occasional delays in message transmission, brief interruptions in data streams, minor glitches that were annoying but not critical. The replacement technicians at Relay Station Gamma 7 investigated each incident as it occurred. They followed the documentation Linda Hernandez had left behind. They checked the systems she had specified. They performed the maintenance she had recommended. But the problems kept getting worse. What they did not understand was that Linda had been running predictive maintenance. She would fix things before they broke, replacing components that were technically still functional but showed early signs of degradation. The documentation explained what to fix when something broke. It did not explain how to tell what would break next. After 6 weeks, Relay Node 447 failed completely. The node that Linda had known ran hot and needed extra cooling had overheated and suffered catastrophic damage. The technicians were confused because the cooling system was working exactly as specified. They did not know that as specified was not good enough for that particular node. The failure of Relay Node 447 increased load on surrounding nodes. Those nodes began to overheat as well. The technicians scrambled to add additional cooling, but they did not know which nodes needed it until they started failing. 3 months after the humans left, the communications relay network was operating at 60% capacity. Message delays that had once been measured in seconds were now measured in hours. Data transmission costs had tripled. Some remote sectors were completely cut off from the network. The Council formed an emergency task force to address the communications crisis. The task force spent 2 weeks analyzing the problem before reaching a conclusion that surprised no one who had been paying attention. The network required more maintenance than the current staff could provide. The human technicians had been maintaining the entire network, with half the personnel that was actually required. They had been doing the work of 2 people, sometimes 3, and had never complained about it. On the Zinthari mining world of Kethvar, the equipment depot that James Rodriguez had maintained was now a disaster zone. The first major failure happened 5 weeks after James left. One of the primary excavation machines simply stopped working. The Zinthari engineers examined it and found that the secondary power coupling system had failed. They consulted the documentation and learned that the secondary system was not standard equipment. It was a modification James had installed to compensate for electromagnetic interference. They also learned that the secondary system required replacement of the coupling modules every 6 months. James had been performing this replacement during routine maintenance. The current staff had not continued the practice because they did not understand why the secondary system existed. After all, the machines were supposed to work without modifications. With the secondary system failed, the primary system was exposed to the full electromagnetic interference of Kethvar's radiation environment. The primary system began to fail as well. The excavation machine was inoperable. They tried to order replacement parts from the manufacturer. The manufacturer informed them that the modifications James had made voided the equipment warranty. If they wanted working machines, they would need to either remove all modifications and accept reduced performance, or pay for custom parts at premium prices. The Zinthari chose to remove the modifications. The excavation machines operated at approximately 60% efficiency in Kethvar's environment, without James's modifications. Mine production dropped accordingly. The economic impact rippled through the sector. Medical facilities across Council space were reporting supply shortages. The problem was not a lack of medical supplies. The supplies existed and were being manufactured at normal rates. The problem was that they were not reaching the places that needed them. Dr. Okonkwo's medical research facility on Crix Prime discovered the issue when they ran out of a critical reagent needed for the Vrel Plague project. The reagent should have been delivered 2 weeks ago. When they inquired about the delay, they learned that the shipment had been sent to a facility on Delphine Station 12 instead. Further, investigation revealed that the logistics network that distributed medical supplies across the galaxy had been quietly managed by a network of human coordinators. These coordinators had not just followed shipping schedules. They had monitored usage rates, predicted needs, and rerouted supplies proactively. They had known that Dr. Okonkwo's lab would need more reagent before the lab itself realized it. Without the human coordinators, the logistics network was following rigid schedules that did not adapt to actual need. Supplies accumulated in some locations while other locations ran short. The system was technically functioning, but it was no longer efficient. The most dangerous crisis was developing on 7 different worlds where humans had been quietly managing ecological balance. These were terraformed worlds where the artificial ecosystems required constant adjustment. Too much of one organism and it would overwhelm the system. Too little of another and the food chain would collapse. The humans had been monitoring thousands of variables and making tiny adjustments constantly. They had documented their methods, but the documentation assumed a level of understanding that the replacement staff did not possess. You could write down that species A needed to be kept at a population level between X and Y. The emergency council session convened 6 months after humanity's departure. The chamber that had seemed so grand and impressive now felt somehow smaller. Perhaps it was because 3 member species had stopped attending. They were too busy dealing with crises on their own worlds. Counselor Veshitar stood at the center platform, his crystalline form flickering with colors that the translation system interpreted as deep concern. Around him, the remaining delegates watched and waited. Everyone knew why they were here. The question was what they were going to do about it. Honored delegates, Veshitar began, we must address the situation that has developed since humanity's withdrawal from council space. I have compiled reports from 41 worlds and 17 major facilities. The pattern is consistent and troubling. A holographic display activated above the center platform. It showed a map of council space with thousands of red markers indicating problems, failures, and crises. The display was mostly red. Communications network operating at 40% capacity. Veshitar read from the report. Estimated cost to restore full functionality, 700 billion credits. Timeline, 18 months minimum. Waste reclamation failures on 14 stations, 3 stations evacuated. Estimated cost to upgrade remaining systems, 200 billion credits. Medical supply chain disrupted. Shortages reported in 37 sectors. Estimated cost to restructure logistics network, 400 billion credits. Terraforming equipment failures on 7 worlds. 3 ecosystems collapsing. Estimated cost of emergency intervention, 900 billion credits. Estimated cost if we fail, total loss of 7 colonies and the lives of approximately 4 million beings. The numbers kept coming. Mining operations, power generation, environmental control, trade dispute resolution, research coordination, educational programs. Every sector showed failure or degradation. Every sector carried an enormous price tag to repair. Rella, the Delphine counselor, activated her speaker. Counselor Veshtar, these numbers are impossible. The council does not have resources at this scale available. Even if we redirected all discretionary funding, we could address perhaps 1/4 of these issues. I am aware, Veshitar replied, which is why we must prioritize. I have prepared a triage assessment that ranks the crises by severity and addresses the most critical needs first. And the less critical needs? Asked Chkrik, the Krik's delegate. What happens to those? They continue to degrade until we have resources to address them. The chamber fell silent. The implications were clear. Council space was in decline and there was no easy way to stop it. A younger delegate, a Delphine named Mora, spoke up. I have been reviewing the historical records of human activities in council space. I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood what they were doing here. With the council's permission, I would like to share my findings. Veshitar gestured for her to continue. Mora activated her own display. I examined the monthly reports filed by human administrators over the past 50 years. These reports are detailed and comprehensive. They document thousands of interventions, modifications, and improvements across every sector of council space. I do not believe any of us actually read them. They were maintenance reports, Rella said dismissively. Routine documentation of routine work. That is what I thought too, Mora replied. But they were not routine. Here is an example from Station Manager Marcus Webb's reports from Delphine Station 7. He documented 47 modifications to the waste reclamation system. Each modification addressed a specific flaw in the original design. Each was implemented using surplus parts and his own time. Each improved efficiency by measurable amounts. Over 20 years, he increased the station's waste processing capacity by 60%, without anyone noticing because the improvements were gradual and undramatic. She switched to another file. Here is Engineer James Rodriguez on Kethvar. His reports document that the mining equipment was fundamentally unsuitable for high radiation environments. Rather than report this as a procurement failure, he modified the equipment to function properly. He did this for 18 years. His monthly reports explained exactly what he was doing and why. Did anyone read these reports? The silence in the chamber was answer enough. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo filed research papers on cross-species disease patterns that should have won major scientific awards. Instead, they were filed as routine medical reports and ignored. Chief Technician Linda Hernandez predicted communication network failures 3 years before they occurred and submitted detailed plans for preventive maintenance. Her proposals were denied as unnecessary expenses. She performed the maintenance anyway, using creative interpretations of existing budget allocations. Mora's voice grew stronger as she continued. I have found hundreds of examples like these. Thousands. Humans were not performing simple maintenance. They were compensating for fundamental flaws in our infrastructure, our equipment, and our procedures. They were bridging gaps in our knowledge. They were solving problems we did not know we had. And they documented everything they did in reports that we never read, because we assumed human work was not worth our attention. Veshitar's colors shifted to a pattern that suggested embarrassment. Delegate Mora, what is your point? My point, Counselor, is that we owe humanity an apology and much more. We treated them as servants when they were the foundation of our civilization. We mocked their work ethic when we should have been grateful for it. We dismissed their contributions when we should have been celebrating them. And now we are paying the price for our arrogance. Skrik clicked rapidly. This is all very moving, Delegate Mora. But what do you propose we do about it? The humans are gone. Apologies will not repair our infrastructure or restore our communications network. We ask them to come back, Mora said simply. We offer them what we should have offered before: respect, recognition, and full partnership in council decisions. They will not come, Rella said quietly. Why would they? We made it clear what we thought of them. Then we offer more, Mora insisted. Economic incentives, technology sharing, full voting rights on all council matters. We give them what they should have had from the beginning. Veshtar considered this. It would be expensive. The concessions required to make such an offer attractive would cost nearly as much as repairing the damage ourselves. But it would work, Mora argued. Humans are practical. If we make a sufficiently generous offer, they will consider it. Will they? Asked a new voice. It was Kella, who had been granted special permission to address the council regarding the infrastructure crisis. I worked with Marcus Webb for 23 years. He never complained about his treatment. He never demanded more resources or better conditions. He simply did his work with excellence and dedication. And when we made it clear that we did not value his contributions, he left. Not with anger, not with threats, with dignity. Do you really think offering money will bring back someone like that? What choice do we have? Rella asked. Our civilization is collapsing. Perhaps that is a lesson we needed to learn, Kella said. We built our society on the unacknowledged labor of people we considered beneath us. We are now learning what that society is truly worth. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates argued for attempting to contact humanity immediately. Others insisted on trying to solve the problems themselves first. A few suggested that the situation was being exaggerated and would resolve itself over time. In the end, the council voted to send a diplomatic mission to human space. The mission would carry an official apology and a proposal for humanity's return to council space. The terms were generous: full council membership with expanded voting rights, guaranteed representation in all major decisions, significant economic incentives, and formal recognition of humanity's contributions to galactic civilization. Veshitar was chosen to lead the delegation. He accepted the role with reluctance. He had been the one who called humans galactic janitors. He had mocked their primitive obsession with exploration. The irony of him begging them to return was not lost on anyone. Preparations. for the mission took 2 weeks. During that time, the crises continued to multiply. 3 more stations reported critical system failures. 2 trade disputes escalated into armed conflicts without human mediators to calm tensions. The communications network degraded further, making coordination across sectors increasingly difficult. The Vrel plague that Dr. Okonkwo had been working to prevent broke out on 2 worlds. Without her research and without the medical logistics network she had helped maintain, the plague spread unchecked. Casualty estimates climbed into the thousands. Reports came in from the 7 worlds with failing ecosystems. 1 had progressed beyond the point of recovery. The entire colony would need to be abandoned within months. The other 6 were approaching similar collapse points. Engineers finally managed to restore some functionality to the communications network, but at enormous cost. The solutions they implemented were temporary patches rather than permanent fixes. Everyone knew that the network would continue degrading without sustained expert maintenance. Veshitar studied all these reports as his ship prepared to depart for human space. He thought about Ambassador Chen's calm dignity, as she had announced humanity's departure. The border between Council space and human territory was marked by a series of automated beacons. The beacons had been installed centuries ago when humanity first joined the Council. They transmitted identification protocols and navigation data to help ships transition between the 2 regions. Veshitar noticed immediately that the beacons had been upgraded. The signals were stronger and clearer than he remembered. The data packages included information about approved approach vectors and communication frequencies. Everything was precise, organized, and efficient. Very human. His ship transmitted the standard diplomatic codes and requested permission to enter human space. The response came within minutes. Permission granted. A single human vessel would meet them at the border to escort them to their destination. The escort ship appeared exactly on schedule. It was small, sleek, and clearly new. Veshitar recognized some design elements from older human ships, but there were differences too. The hull configuration was more advanced. The energy signature suggested power systems that were significantly more efficient than Council standard technology. "How long have we been gone?" Rella asked quietly, watching the human ship through the viewport. 6 months? How did they build new ships in 6 months? Perhaps the ships are not new, Veshtar suggested. Perhaps they simply did not show us their best technology while they were in Council space. The thought was unsettling. What else had humanity held back? The journey to the meeting location took 3 days. During that time, Veshtar and his delegation reviewed their proposal again and again. They refined their arguments and prepared responses to potential objections. They wanted to be ready for difficult negotiations. What they were not prepared for was what they saw when they arrived. The meeting location was a system that had been empty the last time Council surveys mapped it. It was not empty now. A massive station orbited the system's 4th planet, a structure easily 3 times the size of the largest Council station. Dozens of ships moved around it in organized patterns. Construction vessels worked on what appeared to be additional modules being added to the station's outer ring. "How?" Mora whispered. "This is impossible. This level of construction would take decades." "Unless they had been planning it for years," Veshtar said. "Unless they knew they were going to leave long before they actually did." Their escort ship guided them to a docking port. As they disembarked, they were met by a young human officer who greeted them with polite formality. He introduced himself as Lieutenant Chen and explained that he would escort them to the meeting room. "Chen?" Veshitar asked. "Are you related to Ambassador Chen?" "She is my grandmother," the lieutenant said. "She asked me to make sure you were comfortable during your visit." They walked through corridors that were clean, well lit, and remarkably quiet. The station's systems hummed with the kind of efficiency that Council facilities had once possessed but had lost. They passed groups of humans working at various tasks. Everyone they saw looked purposeful and content. The meeting room was simple but comfortable, with accommodations for different species' environmental needs. Ambassador Chen was already there, sitting at a table with a data pad in front of her. She looked older than Veshitar remembered, but her eyes were sharp and alert. She stood as they entered and greeted them with courtesy. "Counselor Veshtar, delegates, welcome to Frontier Station. Please sit. I understand you have traveled a long way to speak with us." Veshitar settled into his designated seat. The other delegates did the same. He noticed that Chen had not offered refreshments or engaged in any of the ritual small talk that usually preceded diplomatic meetings. She was being polite but not warm, professional but not friendly. "Ambassador Chen," he began, "the Council has sent us to convey its sincere apologies for the way humanity was treated during your time in Council space. We have come to understand that we failed to recognize the true value of humanity's contributions to our civilization. We have prepared a formal proposal for humanity's return to the Council under terms that we believe. Acknowledge your proper place among us." He activated his own datapad and transmitted the proposal to Chen's device. She glanced at it briefly, scrolling through the key points. Her expression did not change. "Full Council membership," she read. "Expanded voting rights. Economic incentives including a guaranteed percentage of Council trade revenues. Formal recognition of humanity's historical contributions. Priority status for human research proposals and exploration initiatives." She looked up. "This is a generous offer, Councillor Veshitar. We hope it demonstrates the Council's commitment to correcting past mistakes." Chen set down her datapad. "It does demonstrate something. It demonstrates that Council space is in serious trouble and you need help." Veshitar's colors flickered with discomfort. "We do not deny that there have been difficulties since humanity's departure. But the offer is not solely motivated by practical concerns. We genuinely wish to make amends." "I appreciate that," Chen said. Her tone was not unkind, but it was firm. "However, I must respectfully decline the Council's offer." "Ambassador, please consider." "I have considered it, Counselor." "The answer is no." Rella leaned forward urgently. "Ambassador Chen, you may not understand the full scope of what is happening in Council space. Systems are failing. People are dying. The Vrel plague has broken out on multiple worlds. Ecosystems are collapsing. We need help." "I do understand," Chen replied. "We have been monitoring Council broadcasts. We are aware of the crises. We are sorry for the suffering they are causing. But that does not change our answer." "Why not?" Mora asked. "Is the offer insufficient?" "We can negotiate. We can offer more." "The offer is not insufficient," Chen said. "It is irrelevant. You are trying to solve the wrong problem." "What do you mean?" Chen stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, Frontier Station stretched across the starfield, its lights twinkling against the darkness. "You think your problem is that humans are gone and you need us to come back. That is not your problem. Your problem is that you built a civilization that required an underclass of workers to function. You built systems that depended on people doing thankless work that you did not value. When those people left, the system collapsed because it was never sustainable in the first place." She turned back to face them. "If humanity returned to Council space now, we would be doing you no favors. We would be enabling you to continue the same patterns that created the crisis. You would rely on us to fix your problems again. You would stop valuing our contributions again. In 10 years or 20 years or 50 years, we would be back where we started." "That would not happen," Veshtar protested. "We have learned our lesson." "Have you?" Chen asked. "Or have you simply learned that you need us?" "Those are different things, Counselor." Chikrik clicked thoughtfully. "What would you have us do, Ambassador? We cannot simply abandon millions of beings to die while we contemplate philosophical lessons." "I would have you save yourselves," Chen said. "The documentation we left behind is complete. The knowledge is there. The methods are explained. You have everything you need to repair your systems and restore your civilization. What you lack is not information. What you lack is the willingness to do the work." "We are willing," Mora said, "but we do not have the expertise. The work humans did required decades of experience." "Then spend the decades acquiring that experience," Chen replied. "Train your people. Develop your expertise. Build a civilization that values all its workers, not just the ones who make grand gestures. Learn to take pride in maintenance work and logistics, in the thousands of small tasks that keep a society functioning." She sat back down, her expression softening slightly. "I do not say this to be cruel. I say it because it is the truth you need to hear. The Council built a society that depended on taking humanity's work for granted. If you truly want to change, you need to rebuild that society from its foundation. We cannot do that for you." Veshitar felt something break inside him. It was not anger or frustration. It was the final crumbling of the last piece of pride that had sustained him through this journey. She was right. He knew she was right. The Council had not learned to value human work. They had simply learned to need it. "We will fail," he said quietly. Without your help, millions will die. Some may, Chen acknowledged. I will not lie to you about that. The crises you face are real and dangerous, but you will not fail completely because you cannot afford to fail. You will learn because you must learn. You will adapt because adaptation is the only alternative to extinction. And when you emerge from this crisis, if you emerge, you will be stronger for having solved your own problems. And if we do emerge stronger, Rella asked, if we learn these lessons and rebuild our civilization on better foundations, would humanity consider rejoining the council then? Chen smiled sadly. Perhaps. But I think you will find that you do not need us as much as you believe, and we have found that we do not need the council at all. She gestured to the viewport and the station beyond. Do you know what we have been doing these past 6 months? We have been building, exploring, researching, creating. All the things we wanted to do in council space but could not because we were too busy maintaining your infrastructure.